All right, so we're here talking with Mrs McDermott and myself, Mr Middleton, about Shearing the Rams, a painting, very famous Australian painting by Tom Roberts. It's in your case studies year 11, so it's something that you're going to get some homework on and you're going to have to write an essay about. So we're just going to talk about the work and do the PowerPoint presentation, and we'll put up a copy of this. We'll put up a copy of this PowerPoint with our handwritten notes all over it on the Google Classroom alongside this video, so you've got a record of it. So I guess Tom Roberts was referred to as an Australian impressionist, wasn't he, Mrs McDermott?
He was referred to as an Australian impressionist, but I think probably what he's more known for, I mean, he was obviously influenced by the Impressionists, but he came up with an identity that Australians relate to as far as he captured the landscape and the land as it
and our
appeared.
National identity.
Our national spirit, our national identity.
So in Europe, in the late 1800s, we've of course got Claude Monet, and this is his famous painting,
Sunrise, Impressionist.
Impression Sunrise, which is this one right here that I'm referring to. This painting probably gave Impressionism its name, this painting here, because of its name, Impression Sunrise, and it was referred to, this then gave the Impressionist movement their name.
And the Impressionists were known as they captured light and movement, and that's what they were interested in. They weren't interested in getting something really realistic. It was just how they captured light.
Yeah.
And they used colour in a realistic way, the shafts of colour, and how they put their brush strokes, it was much freer.
So if we think about the symptoms of a cold, sore throat, runny nose and a cough, the symptoms of an Impressionist painting would be they painted outside.
Outdoors, yep.
Yeah, outside, outdoors.
Plein air, I think is the French term.
The French term was called plein air. And that's become just a term that we use now. A bit like if you play music and they want you to play something louder, they use the Italian word forte. If you say to an artist, I'm a plein air painter, that just means you're outside. It's just become part of the vocabulary.
Yes.
The other thing you might see what are some of the other things you might see in an Impressionist painting? Rough brush strokes?
Rough, yeah, but I think probably what they're known as more is capturing light as they saw it. It wasn't this artificial light, it was outdoors light, it was filtered light, it was, impressionistic as how they saw it, was fleeting glimpses of light.
Yeah, and I think with Monet, if you look in the top right-hand corner here, I'll just draw an arrow towards it. These haystack paintings, you see tons of these haystack paintings by Monet, because he'd have a few canvases there, and as the light moved during the day, he'd sort of have a 10 o'clock painting and an 11 o'clock painting and a 12 o'clock painting.
Yeah.
But the whole idea was that they painted outside and they painted quickly. So anyway, what was going on in Australia at the same time is I think Tom Roberts particularly...
A little bit later.
Yeah. This is sort of, if you look at the dates here, 1874 for Impression Sunrise and 1886 for the Artist Camp. So Tom Roberts actually did a walking tour with a friend of his in Spain. So he was in Europe and he walked around and he saw all the Impressionists. I think he actually went painting with some of the French.
Yeah, I think he probably went to France as well.
Yep.
But remember, the travel leg, you didn't just jump on a 380 plane. You had to get a boat over for 3 or 4 months, then travel, then come back. So there was a huge lag on what was doing in Europe and what was happening in Australia.
And so they brought this back to Australia, this idea of painting outside. They actually painted on, they were pretty poor, and so they famously painted on the lids of cigar boxes. These timber lids are 9 by 5 inches, and they had this exhibition called 9 by 5. But here is a image by Tom Roberts of the Artist Camp. It's funny to think this is just outside of what we now know as Melbourne, but this was back in Heidelberg. In Heidelberg. So if you look up Heidelberg,
and this was the first Heidelberg
EL
school.
or LE?
I think Heidelberg is...
well, whatever.
Whatever, sir. They can actually Google that.
And Heidelberg, and it was actually known as the Heidelberg School.
It's Heidelberg.
BER. There we go.
Yes.
And it's the Heidelberg School. It was known as the Heidelberg School in painting.
And if you Google it, you'll know there's 2 Heidelberg schools. So.
Oh, really?
Yes, because the second lot was the second lot of, Arthur, not Arthur Stratton, he was this contemporary. It was the other one was the latest Arthur Boyd and that group
Yep.
of
So
people.
let's move forward and have a look at a few other Heidelberg painters at the time. We've got Frederic McCubbin and he's painting Lost. And I think, oh, look at this, I can zoom in while we're recording. We're learning this year 11 all our new technology. This painting here is if we sort of...
Isn't that she the Lost Girl? Isn't it?
Yeah. And if I grab the highlighter, if we sort of look at... No, that's not going to work. I'll grab back to my pen. If we look at sort of this area here, and then if I zoom out, there's a lot of just pure colour of paint laid down, which is quite sort of strong ochre yellow. And I can't actually, like I can see a leaf here, and I can see a leaf there, and I can see a leaf there, but here, it's just paint, really, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's just painterly application of paint. It's colour, and I mean, I love how he does the details of the tree, but it's just placed in that really ochre, dry Australian bush.
And I guess with this sort of thing, if you just put dobs of paint, so who makes these leaves? Not really Frederic McCubbin. Us as the viewer, we turn these things into leaves. We bring our own knowledge to the work.
Well, yeah, the viewer actually brings the interpretation.
Exactly. This reminds me of, if we go back to Monet's haystacks, if we go back up here to Arthur Streeton's, and it's even called Golden Summer at Eaglemont, Victoria. So it's not even an idea, it is what it is when it was during summer. Eaglemont's a place out in central Victoria.
And he's really captured how the light falls over the landscape.
Well, I look at this and I think it could be a French Impressionist painting, really.
Absolutely. I think they really were informed by how the French Impressionists captured these fleeting pieces of light during the day.
It's all about the light, isn't it?
It's about light, tone and texture, but there's light and dark. You see the shadow in the front there.
However, they had mastered the art of capturing the Australian landscape, uniquely Australian landscape. In these paintings at this time, gum trees look like gum trees. It doesn't look like France, it looks like Australia.
The previous landscapes from the Australian painters were like an English
we looked at
countryside. Whereas this is the first group of artists that really saw the Australian light. And the Australian light is much different to the European light.
It's much
harsher and more blue and it's basically stronger.
Yep, for sure. So the dilemma at this time also in Australia, as we all know, it was seen as a British colony, it was seen as part of Britain, but at the same time, I think Australia was trying to forge its own national identity. And the national identity that it was trying to forge was a bit of a myth, really, because Australians did really all live in the cities. There were very few people living on the land. However, they tried to sort of send back paintings to England, things like this, which showed Australia as, look at his muscly arm. This sort of male, masculine, bush
Riding
hero.
the horse. The horse was the motorcycle of its day.
Yep, it was. And the bushman, the digger, was like a rough, rugged, heroic sort of character. Here we've got, this is called the breakaway. This is actually a moment where a drover is a man on a horse or a person on a horse who takes animals for long treks that might go on for a few weeks to go and find new pasture. So across the land. So here they've been walking all day, sheep during, I think there was a drought. There was probably a pretty famous drought during the 1890s. And they've come across a waterhole, and the idea is you don't want your sheep to all bolt to the waterhole, because these sheep here will push these sheep here into the water, like that, and it will drown them. And so what you want to do is you want to try and let your sheep go slowly, but it's called a breakaway because they've all bolted to the water really quickly. It's a pretty bad moment for a drover. I love this dog.
Yes, the dog is, yes, the close-up details, but more importantly, what this starts to do is identify Australian, and gives it Australian an identity. And up until this point, we really didn't have an identity, and landscape painting became a part of that myth in some ways.
It did.
And I think Tom Roberts is one of these iconic, artists that we can look back on now, and he was really at the forefront of trying to say, this is the Australia we live in. We're not living in England, we're living in a dry, rugged harsh countryside with strong light.
True. That's exactly, you've nailed it. So some of the things though about some of these paintings is, while the Impressionists went and painted outside plein air and painted quickly on, at that moment, what we've got here is the beginning of Tom Roberts' other side of his practice, which is where he painted in the studio. This is clearly...
The horse and the rider is painted in the studio. However, the actual landscape and is quite free.
So his practice would have been, he would have gone outside, done lots and lots of sketches in preparation for this painting, but this isn't like this kind of painting where it was painted at that moment while they were out in the field.
There is something there, isn't there? There's a person there.
Yeah, there's a person there. It's probably a bit composed as well.
Yeah.
So I guess as opposed to the French Impressionists where they really stuck to their guns and painted in the moment and painted for the hour that they were there, I think some of these artists in Australia probably went back to the studio with a fair bit of their work and kept working on it, because there's no way he could have captured this painting that quickly. It's really quite a large painting. It's about a metre by 1.20 metre or something. But anyway, this is a bit of a precursor to the main painting we want to talk about, and this is it here. This is Shearing the Rams, and it's by Tom Roberts, and it's kind of seen as one of his big masterpieces, and it
was a large painting. It was, it's 122 centimetres by 182.
Yep.
So it's not a small painting.
Absolutely. And some things that come to light immediately, firstly, is the light. If we look, I'm just going to change my pen colour to something more suitable. I might use red. If we look here, we've got, what is that? That's sort of the outside harsh light coming in. And remember, when we're painting light, we're also painting shadow. And that's what we're doing here, is all this shadow.
And the shadow actually forms three-dimensional characters in the figures.
So this is a classic example of the darker you make something, the further back it goes. And the lighter you make something, you bring it forward. And
what I love about his tonal work, because it's probably not quite impressionistic, but look at the trousers, the shirts, they've got lovely form.
Oh yeah, look at that.
And that, I don't think the Impressionists would have gone into that much detail. So this is where it's a bit conflicting.
So this is the beginning of what I would call, there's a romanticised view of Australia. And when I say romantic, I don't mean like boy-girl love. I mean romanticised as in like a poetic...
A cultural identification.
Yeah.
What we identify with, like... Australia 2020 is completely different to the Australia in 1890.
So the shearer was seen as a hero, wasn't he? Like it was very much a male.
He's our modern day, maybe footballer in some ways.
Yeah, in some ways. Yep, definitely.
They were rugged. They were strong. They probably earned a lot of money, and the farmer really needed them.
So this person here.
Do you think he was the farmer?
No, he was the counter. So shearers got paid. I'll just fix that little circle up. So I'll just arrow him actually. Shearers got paid by how many sheep they sheared. And this guy's here, his job was to count and tally how many sheep each shearer sheared during the day, and then if you get paid per sheep. The interesting thing is this is called shearing the rams, and you'll notice by the horns on all these sheep.
They are rams.
They are rams, which are the males. So this is where I want to get into the mythology of it all. This is a very masculine scene. You'll notice there are no women in this image. Not even the sheep are women. They're all male, masculine, which says something about the image of Australia in the bush that Tom Roberts was trying to portray, and it was a masculine environment. Women's place weren't really in the shearing shed. We do know, I actually have a cousin who owns a sheep farm, and she's a wool classer, and she actually knows how to shear. So we do know that this is not entirely true, this painting, but that there was...
I think it was this myth that one of the, the Australians to identify with. What I love about it is the sheep was a symbol of Australia's wealth and prosperity.
Yep.
And it probably carried over to the 1950s and 60s. So this is like something that they've put together and it's lasted 100 years because of the fleece, the wealth of the sheep, living off the land of milk and honey, living off the sheep's back.
Ram fleece was worth more money. So they did actually save the rams till last. And they were bigger animals and they were harder to shear. It is quite a physical job. It is quite hard on your back and everything. But yes, they are. The rams were left to last. And the fleece from the rams was highly valued. I've heard a rumour that this person here...
Was a girl?
No, we'll talk about that. This person I think was originally Aboriginal and then he changed it. And it was quite common to have Aboriginal people working on properties in Australia. That was one of the main things they employed to do. But it's interesting that everybody in this is male and white and muscular and large. I just want to quickly flick down to an actual shearing shed from the time. You'll notice up here that it's a mechanised shearing shed. They're using machines. Here's another one, and this one doesn't have machines in it. So, we might excuse Tom Roberts a little bit. They did actually still shear by hand, but as far as I know, shearing was mechanised. There was actually a shearer's strike going on at that time over the question of mechanised shearing, because once it's mechanised, you can shear more sheep. But as far as I know, to be fair to Tom Roberts, the rams were shorn by hand at the end of the shearing session.
Because they were very precious.
They were very precious.
They didn't. And what I love about it, just look at the directions. If you look at it, it's the golden triangle. If you could actually make it proportionally, what the centre figure is right in the centre. And if you're looking at this through a structural frame, it's just a very excellent example of how you can actually, how he's put the shapes and the direction of the shapes.
Yeah.
It's all there, and that's what they know as the golden triangle. In terms of direction.
Absolutely, and it's interesting that your eye line starts here.
That's right.
It's taken all the way to that light source at the back of the room. And there's lots of little dramas going on. This guy's sharpening his shears. This guy's having a drink. This guy's smoking his pipe, counting. This little guy is carrying the wool. And then this little guy is, and we're going to talk about him in a second, he's actually not sweeping the floor, he's dishing out water to everybody.
Water or tar?
It's tar.
It could
so
be
if
tar. If you cut the sheep, you actually put some tar on.
If you actually accidentally cut the sheep while shearing it, you would actually put tar on the cuts.
Yeah.
All right, so
that's getting back to all that information we've just talked about is a really good discussion on the structural frame. Now, if we were going to go back onto the cultural frame...
We might get to that because we'll make some notes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll make some notes. So we might quickly just flick through. Here's a sketch, one of many sketches that Tom Roberts did in preparation for doing the painting. And you'll notice down here that the main figure isn't even sort of really thought about much yet. I think he was getting a handle on what was going to go on in the background. And in fact, he's changed it. So it's a bit different. Now, apparently, this person here, which is...
The tar girl.
The tar boy, actually turns out it was a girl. It was an 8-year-old girl.
Whose father was a shearer, or...
Yeah, something like that. He used her to model the painting. So he couldn't get his hands on an 8-year-old boy. So, was it the shearer, the farmer, the station owner? I think his daughter posed for that person. So shearing was hard physical work. The sheds were really hot. As I said, my cousin's got a shearing shed, and it's blindingly hot in summer.
And it smells.
And shearing is
lanolin,
shearing is done in summer. So you leave the wool on the sheep all through winter, and then you take it off at the beginning of summer, so they can That's when you take the wool. That's when you harvest the wool, for obvious reasons so they can sort of get through the summer without their wool on them. Let's talk about frames. What are the two main frames we'd look at here?
Oh, look, I think this is obvious, a cultural frame and a structural frame. But if you wanted to go through, it's a really good example. The subjective frame, you know, you all have a reaction. Now, people who have grown up on a farm or had family on a farm have this sort of emotional attachment. Other people who haven't don't. But, you know, you can look at it. How does it make you feel? You know, there's a whole lot of people involved. Does it
Okay, so
remind you of visits?
let's make 5 points that are structural.
Okay.
And
okay, the structural frame points.
yeah, structural
I think
frame
it's
points.
direction.
I'm going to just do something. I'm just going to get a bit tricky here.
Yep.
And now I can change colour. Yep.
Okay.
Structural frame.
The structural frame. I think there's direction. There's a strong diagonal direction leading backwards, which is it makes. That's why it's
Some
so
people call
iconic.
these vector lines.
Yep.
These vector lines, and they are the lines that take you around the painting.
The eye goes right to that little shaft of light at the back.
Yeah, why does your eye go from here back to there, then across to this guy, and then back to the main shearer? They're called vector lines. I'm going to actually undo that because I want to keep, and they're hidden in the painting. And what's it called? What's the term called when an artist makes decisions about this will go in the bottom left corner, this will go in the back right corner? We call that composition.
Yeah. And his composition is very symmetrical. If you look at it, it's very balanced.
It is very balanced.
And I think the colour is so rich and warm and so Australian.
So let's get to colour and light. So how do you achieve light in a painting? You use tone and shadow.
And where the light source is coming from. And if you're talking about the structural frame, if you identify where the light source is coming from, it immediately gives you some tonal understanding.
Now we all know the other half of the structural frame is the symbolism. And the main symbols in here are
the sheep, the symbol of Australian and country life.
And the masculinity of it.
Yep.
Which is, you know, the fact that they're all male. Yep, there's my letter there. The sheep are a symbol of, what are they a symbol of?
Sheep are a symbol of Australian, living off the sheep's back.
Yeah, Australian primary industry. Australian prosperity, how about that? Prosperity. Now the fact that they're a symbol of Australian prosperity, because yes, it was said that Australia made its fortune off the wool off the sheep's back. So I think we can then, from the symbol of Australian prosperity, you know what, I think they're all quite sort of Anglo, so we'll go with in the cultural frame, everyone in it is quite Anglo-Saxon, you know, of British origins. And also is culturally symbolic of the sort of masculine what would it be? The sort of masculine culture.
Lifestyle. The lifestyle, I think, it was reflective that the male was the breadwinner and he actually provided.
So men have power and they provide and they do all the work. But we all know that that's not true.
That's right. Well, but remember, we've got to put it in the context, and that's when we're looking at it from the postmodern frame, which we're not there yet, but does it still have the same meaning and value as today? It doesn't.
Well, this is not really showing anything about Indigenous Australia. This is not really showing anything about...
multicultural Australia, because...
Yeah, no, multicultural. We know that there were a lot of Chinese people living in Australia at the time.
Yep.
So all these things, I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to create creates a romanticised view.
Yeah, it
It's a bit
reflected
of a myth.
Culture like class, race, gender, political and economical of what they wanted us to see, not necessarily what was happening at the time.
That's really a good point of what they...
It's a very staged, theatrical piece of work.
Yeah.
Not unsimilar to...
Who's they? Who's they?
The population at the time, the actual bureaucrats, the actual...
This is
wealth that were directing the people who had the power. So political, rich, and it was a very conservative society too.
Yeah, it was. So maybe what popular culture wanted us to see at the time.
All the political governing body at the time.
I think this painting actually went back to England and was used as a sort of a marketing tool for Australia and Australianness. I think I don't know. Can we talk about much more? I think what you need to do now in year 11 is do some reading and go and do a research. Go to a few different sources on the web. Look up this painting, and Miss Wong has made up a worksheet for you, which I'm about to post up on Google Classroom as well. So after we've finished this, I'm going to post on Classroom this video, the original PowerPoint for this talk, and also a worksheet for you to do. Okay. I can't think of really anything else. Oh, practice. Let's talk about practice. One more thing. Let's talk about practice as I write things backwards. Yeah. So artist practice. Definitely this painting was done in the studio, yeah?
Yeah, it was done, a lot of the actual sketches probably would have been done on site, and the individuals would have been
He actually went
staged.
and painted in, he spent time in shearing sheds, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yes. So he actually got his practice was some on site, and then he actually physically put it together, because he was much more refined than a lot of the Impressionists. Look at the tonal work and how the actual folds of the clothes.
Yeah,
If
we go back to a proper Impressionist painting,
It's
if we go back to a proper Impressionist painting, we get these lumps of paint and nothing's really defined, and it's quite blurry and soft. But if we go back to Tom Roberts, this painting, almost by the fact, he did paint outside, he did do plein air, but I think once he's in the studio and, the pressure's on him to do such a masterpiece.
I think you look at it as a realistic oil painting, but there are free brushstrokes, but of true interest in light. And I suppose that's where what he got from the Impressionists, the understanding of light.
Yep, so he's influenced by Impressionism, definitely.
Influence, another word is informed, I suppose, if you want.
Informed by Impressionism is a good...
They're all the art terms that you've got to start putting in your essays, girls, because that's what builds your description.
I'm going to say French Impressionism, because there was Impressionism going on all over the world, but it was particularly the French Impressionists. Now, if you want to know a bit more about just Impressionism, I've put back up here at the very first slide, probably not the very first slide, I have put just here a link for you to go and do some further exploration of just Impressionism, just to get some quick knowledge on it. But we're actually not learning about French Impressionism. That's a whole other thing we're going to do later in the year. At the moment, we're concentrating on Australian Impressionism. So we're sort of starting from the back, and we're starting from the front and going to the back, aren't we? Because if you're doing it in chronological order, you should probably do French Impressionism first. But we're going to start with Australia, and then we'll look back later in the year at French Impressionism, because it's a whole other case study on its own.
It's a really good comparison.
After being down at Bundanon, I think it's important we jump straight into Australian art. I think that's about it. So anyway, we'll look forward to reading your responses in the worksheet. Bye.